If you don't know what's happening here in Canada, things have just been getting worse and worse and worse, progressively worse under the Liberal government. And, you know, considering that the Liberals and Justin Trudeau, their approval rating is in the toilet, every poll for months and months and months now, like it's just been nonstop for the last, 4, 5, 6 months there, have been showing that the Liberals are done. They're done. And that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are going to win the next election, whenever that is. And it's going to actually be a huge win. The latest poll that just came out a couple days ago are showing that the Conservatives are going to win the most seats in Canadian history. That's how fed up people are with the Liberals now. You'd think that the Liberals might, you know, be a little more careful about what they do when it comes to, you know, legislation or trying to pass laws and things like that, when they're doing so poorly and the entire country wants them out. But no. What does Justin Trudeau and the Liberals do? They go and they push for even more asinine legislation. They are going to raise the much-hated carbon tax. They are raising other taxes as well. And they are now trying to push through the Bill 63, which is the online harms bill, which of course is being framed as a good thing by mainstream legacy media and by those who are just completely ignorant about what the bill actually is. They put in a little part of this bill, which is good, which is going to protect children. It's going to have provisions against child pornography and revenge porn and things like that. Nobody would disagree with that. But of course, that's not what the main purpose of this bill is. That's just something they slid in there, and the rest of the bill is absolutely terrible in every way. To put it simply, this bill is a blatant attack against freedom of expression, free speech in every possible way.
It seems to be two bills in one, in my view. You've got a whole area that's aimed at stopping child sexual exploitation, revenge porn, things like that. And then you've got hate speech, incitement to genocide, all these other things. Does this seem like they've kind of jammed a bunch of things together that the only thing they have in common is that they might happen online?
This is really, I think, sort of an omnibus bill of all of the things that happen online that we don't like, sort of wedged into one big thing. But it also will have some offline applications as well, in terms of things like the abilities to get peace bonds applied to people who they think might do something, which can include things like house arrest. So those provisions, it seems that they maybe should sever that off into a separate bill. But there's a lot of problems with this because the government really has this big idea that they can sort of tame the internet, and they're really bad at it.
And the government is actually setting up a committee. Yeah, they're growing their bureaucracy. Oh, big surprise there. The government is setting up a committee. What are they calling it? They're calling it the Digital Safety Office of Canada. And this committee is going to decide what is and what is not hate speech.
They call this the Digital Safety Office of Canada. They've created another bureaucracy that can go ahead and carry out government wishes and government, I won't say oppression, but government censorship. The office's mandate is to support the Commission and the Ombudsman in the fulfillment of their mandates, the exercise of their powers, and the performance of their duties and functions. They create an office, they create an Ombudsman, they just appoint government workers who've been so good at doing everything.
True North News reporting on this. Liberals' online hate bill contains $70,000 fines for speech and life imprisonment for hate crimes. Well, what are hate crimes? Who determines what they are? Well, they leave them vague intentionally, and that's so that later people can make new interpretations for these things depending on what's convenient in the moment, really, at the end of the day. It was, I can't remember who, but it was in Soviet Russia. They said, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. Well, it's legislation like this that will enable that and make it possible.
Liberal government recently introduced their online hate legislation. While diving deep into it, It feels more like the Minority Report. Hello, I'm Adrienne Batra. With me are Brian Lilly and Laurie Goldstein. Brian, I think our viewers would remember the Minority Report. It was a movie done. Tom Cruise was in it, but it was a science fiction book from 1956 by Philip Dick, and it's all about pre-crime, preventing pre-crime, and going into this online legislation that the Liberals just introduced. There's a portion of it that is trying to prevent pre-crime. What the hell is going on here?
It's if someone is suspected that they might partake in a hate crime, they can be arrested and put under house arrest to stop them from committing the crime. This is flagrantly unconstitutional. There's no way that this would stand. And I actually think that of a few parts of the bill. This is a very problematic bill that the government is going to wrap itself up in the mantle of saying, we are protecting children. Why are you against protecting children from online harm?
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
But you've got the pre-crime stuff. You've got life sentences for hate crimes. That's putting it up there with first-degree murder. Now, unless you commit a hate crime where you kill a bunch of people motivated by hate, I don't see that standing up in court.
There are aspects of the bill, as you both said, that are legitimate. Things like revenge porn, dealing with that, dealing with child exploitation, child porn, the abuse of children. Those are legitimate. But what they did was what got the headlines, because people, it was released late, people read it, oh, this isn't so bad, it's not as bad. But then when you do a deep dive, as both the Canadian Civil Liberties Association and the Canadian Constitution Federation have done. And remember, those were the two bodies that convinced a federal judge that Justin Trudeau's invocation of the Emergencies Act was an unjustified attack on the rights of Canadians. Yeah. They're saying exactly the same things about this bill.
So here we have an out-of-control tyrannical government who's now going to decide what is and what isn't hate speech. If you don't see anything wrong with that, why are you living here? Why aren't you living in North Korea? Like, it is not acceptable to allow government to decide what is and is not hate speech. That, to me, is so past a red line. Like, that's not tolerable in any way. Especially a government that's behaved as it has for the last few years. For them to decide what's hate and what isn't hate, this is absolutely asinine. This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable overreach. It can't be tolerated.
Highlighting the Trudeau government's actions during the pandemic, Poilievre remarked Justin Trudeau said anyone who criticised him during the pandemic was engaging in hate speech. This statement underscores a fear that the governments might use the proposed legislation to silence dissent in various scenarios. I think that's almost inevitable. What Trudeau's doing in Canada should terrify everyone in the Western world who cares about being free from government tyranny, censorship and disinformation. That's because Trudeau is pioneering a new way for governments to take control over the information environment, spreading disinformation and demanding censorship that is similar but different to efforts we are seeing in places like California, Australia and New Zealand. It's truly a global issue. It appears to be built around a pre-agreed global structure. No doubt when they have these conferences, WEF for example, agreements like this are refined, suggested, and a kind of consensus is agreed upon. Otherwise, why would this be happening? People across the Western world were rightly alarmed when Trudeau invoked for the first time in Canadian history the Emergency Measures Act and froze bank accounts of people who had simply donated to the truckers' cause. Trudeau's crackdown on the Freedom Convoy protesters was followed by efforts to regulate and control the internet. His Online Streaming Act and Online News Act gave the government expansive new powers to regulate what happens and what you see online. The atmosphere created by Trudeau and his party is completely upending Canadian society, leading to the persecution of his detractors and limiting speech and expression. If we see more laws like this, we will see more problems like this. And as we keep illustrating and reiterating, it's happening everywhere. Have you not noticed that our politicians seem similar, seem to have a similar agenda, seem to be funded in similar ways, seem to have comparable interests, even right down to their hobbies, haircuts, dress sense, and global conferences that they attend? In looking to defend minorities and promote culture, etc., Trudeau's Liberals are everything they once feared. They are authoritarian, anti-democratic, and illiberal. And what's happening in Canada is not separate from what's happening in the US, the UK, Europe, and Brazil, but intimately connected to those nations. Trudeau isn't so different from President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Governor Gavin Newsom, and most other Democrats in the US. The difference is that he's ahead of them. Yes, and if you consider, say, the truckers' protests, and then consider the events of January 6th, and even something like the burgeoning support among truckers in New York. These, I imagine, are actually the issues that they would like to address with new legislation. I actually don't think they care that much about protecting your children.
And if this somehow passes before this government is ousted, we have to do everything we can to overload this committee and just completely destroy the system they're setting up. We have to report everything that the Liberals have done to us. Like the comments Trudeau made against unvaccinated, citizens a couple of years ago. I mean, to me, that is actually hate speech. So we need to make sure he goes to prison for that. The point is here, everybody's got to wake up and see what's going on here. The Liberals are framing this so that if you somehow oppose this bill, you must be against protecting children. Think of the children. This is so typical of what the Liberals do. They'll come up with a piece of legislation to pass what they really want to get passed, and then they put something in there that's actually decent and frame it around that to get all the other stuff in. They've been doing this since they've been in office. It can't be allowed. This is insane, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I said ladies and gentlemen. I didn't say any of the other 67,000 genders. And I guess I'm not being inclusive enough. So I guess that's hate speech. And I guess under this new legislation, I'm going to go to prison.
JustinCredible.tv.
If you like what you've seen and want to support this Justin instead of that Justin, click that big shiny join button to become an exclusive JCred TV member and receive some awesome membership perks.
Keep on rocking in the free world! Keep on rocking in the free world! Woo!
Keep on rocking in the free world.
But most of all, do it because Trudeau would rather you didn't.
I thought I was going to make it through this, but I'm not. It hurts.
Freedom! 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 Freedom!
Freedom is essential.